Welcome back to Not a Straight Line with me, Pete Daly-Dickson. This is the show that explores the non-linear journeys of artists and entrepreneurs to inspire you as you zigzag through your own non-straight line life. And this week I'm joined by the illuminating Jeff Mask. And that's not a word I pulled from a thesaurus just to sound different from last week. This is another of those pivotal conversations on Not a Straight Line where you learn as much about yourself as about the guest. Jeff Mask is a coach of CEOs with experience in business, marketing, and development of big software companies. However, it's Jeff's early past that interested me the most in as far as it shaped the man that he is today. From a young, anxious child pushed to the outside of his social circles, Jeff was supported by his family and fostered an emotional intelligence beyond his years. His innate ability to connect with people through kindness and empathy brought his faith-filled life through as many obstacles as triumphs. And here, in this conversation, Jeff shares what he's learned in what is essentially a 10,000-foot view of his coaching strategy to give people the fulfilling life they want for their business and their relationships. So let's get in there and hear from Jeff. So we'll just do a few three physiological sighs before we start. I don't know if you know what a physiological sigh is, something I learned from Andrew Huberman, not directly, but just from his podcast. So a physiological sigh is 2 breaths in through the nose, held at the top, and then breathe out through the mouth. So if we just the three of us, we'll just close our eyes now and breathe in through the nose. And again. One last time. Jeff Mask, welcome to the Not a Straight Line podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I love breathing. That's powerful. Seriously, so powerful.
Yeah, it's like all great things that happen in life. It was an accident. Did it one time with a guest on a podcast fairly early on. And I actually found it really helpful for myself. And I thought, you know what? This could be a really good thing. You know, like Stephen Bartlett on Diary of a CEO has got his question at the end, which he asks. It's part of the Not a Straight Line experience. It's just that, and I just find it regulates. So Jeff, just for the sake of the listener, I know where you are, but just help the listener orient you geographically in this wonderful world of ours. Where are you right now?
I am in the snow-capped, beautiful mountains of Utah, just south of Salt Lake, in a little town called Alpine, and it's just glorious. I love it. But I'm from the desert originally, which is, I think, why I appreciate snow-capped mountains more than most, with deer running by. And I'll never get used to it. I just love it.
It sounds idyllic.
It's great. We love it.
Yeah. So we start all of these Not a Straight Line conversations the same way. I take my guest up to the top diving board and we jump into the conversation together with that first question that I send by email a couple of days before. So when you saw that question, what came to mind immediately for you?
Yeah. First I thought it might be getting diagnosed with cancer. That was a pretty massive zag for me that just was not obviously in my plan. And that was pretty big. But I think the even more dramatic of a shift was December of 2017, when we were relocating homes and states. You know, we were going to live 12 hours away. We were looking for a home, and we came across, after looking for a week, this home that both my wife and I just felt something. It just felt right. We came around this bend and we both saw it and went, wow. Just kind of stopped, but there was no for sale sign. It wasn't on the market. And we kept driving around the block, and I just kept thinking, something's different here. I've got to do something. So I went back to the home, pulled in front of the house, and my wife looked at me. She said, "What are you doing?" And I said, you know what I'm doing. And I just got out and went and knocked on the door, which is something you don't do, right? If something's not for sale, you don't say, hey, I want to buy your home, because your leverage is gone. And I know that about negotiations, but I thought something's different here. So that one act of knocking on one door literally changed the next, now it's been 7 years, course of our lives so dramatically that now historically, as I connect the dots back to that point, nothing that I've done in my life has changed our trajectory, our family dynamic, our business dynamic, my mindset, so many things just from that simple knock and what ensued after that courageous or foolish knock, depending on who you talk to.
I'm going to be deeply interested, as I am with all guests, to explore that last 7 years. It seems there's going to be enough zigs and zags in that last 7 years and in the whole life previously. So we might have to do a bonus follow-up episode. It does seem amazing to me. Moving house is it's a big event for a lot of people. It's stressful and whatever. But to put it up there, even beyond being diagnosed with cancer, about it being a significant zag in your life, I'm really struggling to get my head around that. So just with a broad brush strokes, kind of paint out for us why it was so significant for you.
Yeah, great question. Mostly because God's hand was behind it so clearly. I'm a I believe deeply in God, and not everyone listening does, and that's fine. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's just what works for me. And I just felt this incredible prompting and clarity to pursue it. So as I did so, it became more and more impossible. I mean, like dramatically impossible. From the house that we were moving from to this particular home, the whole point was to completely be financially independent and everything. But the home that we sold versus the home that we purchased, the home we purchased was 4 times more expensive than the home that we sold. It was not my desire. I didn't want a larger home. I didn't want anything more expensive, but it just felt right. And what it did is pushed me to the end and the edge of fear in a way that never really has before. Now, cancer, you would think would have, but because my cancer was stage 1, we caught it well enough, treated it quickly to where it wasn't as life-threatening as some of my friends who had melanoma as well, who were in stage 4. And that's a very different, I would have said cancer had been stage 4, but it wasn't. I didn't have to go through chemo or radiation, but I did have a major surgery and it was very, very scary. But this particular event, it just rattled me. It pushed me. It taught me about what my real fears were, what my fear of perception of others was, that I thought, I don't really care what people think. And I learned that when things were cheaper, more realistic, sure. But when something was more expensive and it made me go into a level and an echelon of wealth that might give me a perception that I were some prideful, look at me type person, I realized that's a different form of pride and caring about what others think. That to the other, it's just the opposite of what, before. And I thought, wow, I'm learning new things about fear, about pride. And it just pushed me to the next level.
About yourself, ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. It was intense. And I was moving up here to start with a new tech company after I had just graduated with my MBA. This was not in the plans at all. And because I was faced with such an insurmountable, impossible mountain, I learned things about myself that I didn't know were there. And it pushed me to limits that I didn't know that I could withstand. And looking back, it was really miraculous. And at the time, The Greatest Showman had just come out. I love that movie and I love that soundtrack. And as I was driving back home after saying we'd like to buy your home, I just kept thinking, what am I doing? What am I having the doubts and the insecurities and all the things. And then there was a line of one of the songs that says, we can live in a world that we design. And I just thought, yeah, I'm going to go design it. I'm going to go create it. Let go of the fear, let go of the insecurity, let go of what others think. spiritually, this feels right. Just go with it. Replace faith with fear and move forward step by step, see what happens. So that was the beginning of a long, arduous process. I have plenty of more details. I'll share to the extent that that you want to hear, but it was not for the faint of heart. And I'll just say that the transaction fell through 11 times. It just completely imploded 11 different times, and every time it did, I was relieved because I was like, okay, good. Like I don't really want this anyway, and it's a lot easier to not do this. But every time it would fall through, there was a door would close and a window would open. And I'd go, oh no, I need to keep pursuing. And 11 different times. In fact, the last time it fell through was on a flight from Salt Lake to London to go speak at an event. It was supposed to close while I was in the air. I had a friend signing for me. We had to do a whole bunch of paperwork for that. And I landed in London to 5 voicemails and a whole bunch of missed calls letting me know the deal imploded again. And I just thought, you got to be kidding me. So it was a lot.
That's a lesson in itself, isn't it? In terms of, I don't know, perseverance,
Stupidity.
Well, listen, you called that, not me. I mean, can you reflect on any other times in your life where you have exercised that, or was this the time where you think that you learned that? And what is it that you learned?
Yeah,
with kind of just keeping going after 11 knockbacks. I mean, the thing that comes to mind is that Japanese proverbs, fall down 7, get up, fall down 7 times, get up 8. It's like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down or knocked back. It's the getting up that matters.
totally. So had I experienced this in my life before? Yes. To this extent, no. And there's a fine line between perseverance and pride, right? Sometimes you have to know, hey, your ego's in the way. Just let it be. And so what I was doing this whole journey was trying to discern, where is my ego in this? Is this me trying to prove something, or is there a bigger picture? And so constantly I had to get very clear about my deepest, purest motives behind this. And every time I did, it gave me the courage and the faith to keep pursuing, because I had to get very clear with myself and my own demons and my own doubts and insecurities that we all have, to go, no, this is something that's right. And I don't know why it's right. Keep going.
How did you do that?
Prayer.
For somebody, if the listener doesn't subscribe to a religious experience like prayer, what else can we latch onto?
Meditation. Just try and getting very clear in your mind. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Being brutally honest with the questions and the answers, and going several layers deep as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. And the reason why, for me personally, prayer helps is it anchors me back to a bigger purpose. And some will say, what does the universe want from you? What are you meant to do and create in the world? And whenever I can tie what I'm doing to my North Star, it helps me have the discipline to discern what path and what are my motives, and then continue to pursue it in courage. And man, it's tough. And many people who knew me well were saying, Jeff, I don't think you're on the right path. I think you are blinded. Family members were saying, I don't think you're hearing the right voice. You better check yourself. And it was a fair point. And I said, if I were you, I would probably say the exact same thing. And I don't fault you at all, because it does feel completely just irresponsible and just out of character. And yet it was right.
Were you and your wife ever at odds, or were you always on the same page with it?
You asked the good questions. For the most part, we were on the same page. But then, when things would fall through, say, for example, when you sell your home in Arizona and sold most of your furniture in Arizona, because the home you bought up here, you bought the furniture as well, on the drive up, it falls through. That's a moment where your wife goes, what are we doing? Now, where do we go? We have no place to go. We were going to our new home.
What number was that? What number fall through was that?
That was number 6 or 7. Yeah. So she would get frustrated, and then she'd look at me and go, she knew my heart, and she knew my intentions, and she would calm down and go, yeah, this isn't you. This is beyond both of us, and we've just got to see what works. And with all of this craziness, and I think this is one of the reasons why I landed on this particular event in my life. This is the impetus of creating our coaching business together. This house was the motivating factor to say it's finally time to start coaching CEOs. It's an idea that I had had for 10 years before that, but I just thought, when the time was right, I wanted to build businesses first. I wanted to coach and help CEOs from a business operator's perspective, not a theorist who likes books and models, but has never actually done it. And so I wanted to, intentionally build businesses before I coached. But then in hindsight, that intentional desire to build businesses and the delay was less about getting experience and more about fear. It just was. And I didn't, at the time I told myself it wasn't, but when it was time to actually do it, I realized, oh yeah, I'm scared. Who am I to coach CEOs? Who am I? All the things that start to go in your head, right? But this house was the forcing function to say, go make it work.
Well, how so? But because of the financial stretch.
Correct. Yeah, the financial is like, wait, this wasn't in my wheelhouse. This isn't what I even wanted to do. We already had this other paid off and all the things. And I thought, I don't want to do this. And then I thought, and honestly, I was awakened in February of 2018 at 3 a.m. roughly with the clear thought, it's time to start your coaching business. And I don't wake up in the morning, first of all. And if I do, I'm not a clear thinker. But this morning was vastly different. And so began the journey of a completely new life, a completely new lifestyle, of overcoming fears and insecurities professionally that I had never got done to this level. It was life-changing for both me and my wife, who co-founded it with me.
Put a flag in the conversation at that point. There's just from a story perspective, I think that's going to be something interesting to come back to that moment in February 2018. And I'm really pleased that you used the term North Star just a few minutes ago in our conversation. It's one of the terms that was there in the birth of this podcast. It's one of the themes that it's actually, regardless of the zigs and zags that we take, there's a sense, some people call it purpose, some people call it just a sense of direction or North Star. One previous guest actually used that same term. So I want to come back to that. But now I want to go back to young Jeff.
Great.
Like perhaps not at kindergarten, but maybe elementary, junior school. And I'm curious about the sort of things that were lighting him up, either academically or outside of school. Paint a picture for us of what young Jeff was like.
Yeah, young Jeff was the youngest of 6 kids, with a father who was a school teacher and a mother who was a great mom who stayed at home. And so financially, we didn't have very much, but we always had sufficient. But if I wanted to get anything extra, the necessities, I had to earn it. And so my siblings and I, throughout the years, we had paper routes back when kids were able to do this. Now the world doesn't necessarily allow that. So we wake up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning every day and fold our papers and put them in our bags and run around ride around the neighborhood on our bicycles. And it was difficult, hard, good work, but that taught me a lot.
And is it like you see in the sort of TV and films when the kids just throw the things onto the driveway? Okay.
Yeah, I got really good at it. I got good at knowing where the dogs were, which ones to avoid, how to ride my bike in certain way. Like seriously, you got good at knowing what to do and what not to do, how to throw it right so you don't fall off your bike. I mean, because your bike is really, really heavy with all the papers stuffed in the baskets in the back and the front. So you had to balance it well. And I was so small that I'd have the bike would be, the front wheel would be up in the air because all the papers were in the back, and I'd have to run and jump onto the bike to, I didn't weigh much at all. There was a lot of skills that we had to learn, but that was fun. But one day when I was running to school with my sister, we tripped up feet I don't know how we did it. And of all places to fall, instead of falling on grass or on even the pavement, I fell on a brick wall about a foot tall. And of all places to fall, my teeth hit
Oh
the
my
brick
God.
wall.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
just right on. And it, as you can imagine, was very difficult. So to make this story a little bit shorter,
You don't have to worry about making it shorter. We've got time.
okay, we ran to my sister ran home. My mom came to get me. I was bleeding everywhere. They took me to the dentist, and the dentist said, "Go back to the place of the accident. Go get the teeth, and we'll try and put them in while the gums are still fresh, and hopefully they'll take them. You know, they won't be gone forever." She goes to find them, comes back and says, "Doctor, they weren't there." And so he said, "That's odd." So he did a little bit more inspecting, and sure enough, they had been jammed up my nose about an inch and a half.
Oh
Terrible.
my God.
That began a journey of lots of pain, physical and emotional, where they did a major reconstructive surgery. I had lots of stitches. I swelled up like a monkey. It was brutal.
How old were you?
I was about 8 or 9 years old,
Okay,
roughly.
very young.
Yeah, and what had happened is I also had really thick glasses. I'm legally blind. I had messed up teeth that were all swollen and everything, and I started to get made fun of a lot at school, to the point where I just kinda didn't want to be I didn't wanna be anyone's target or anyone's victim, right? So I just kind of played it safe. And in playing it safe, I began to just disassociate more and more. I just felt lonely. I felt very unlovable. I felt an easy target of a lot of bad jokes. And I just felt low for a while. I don't know how long.
Was that true? Was that true at home too, or was it just
Yeah.
okay?
Not as much at home, but it was definitely at school and in social settings. I felt very insecure, and for good reason. If you could see pictures of me, it's pretty awesome to see it. It's like, oh, a poor kid. So one day I remember I was with my sister and her then boyfriend, now her husband, and we were at a home. They were taking care. It was a friend's home. They were taking care of. And I went with them for some reason. I still don't know why. And they were at odds with each other that afternoon. They were just, the energy was not good. They were kind of fighting and frustrated, and I didn't like that feeling. I remember I did something that intentionally got them to laugh. It was a good, healthy belly laugh, and it just kind of dispersed the negative tension. And I remember feeling this jolt of light and joy that just hit me. And I felt so alleviated. I felt so happy. And I remember thinking, what happened? I haven't felt this for a long time. Like, why do I feel good? And I realized, oh, I helped them feel good. I helped them find joy. And at that age, I started thinking, okay, if I want to find joy, I'm going to help people feel happy. I'm going to serve them. I'm going to look for them. And this was young. Now I didn't do it perfectly because I was 9, right? But at a very young age, I started to think, how can I help people be happy? And what can I do to be a light in their life? And in so doing, I'll find joy as well. And so that started at a really young age, which is why is in adulthood, when people say, oh, I'm just not as optimistic as you, Jeff. I just don't think like you, Jeff. Well, they don't realize that years and years of practice that I had of trying to reframe my brain around how to find and create joy in life versus just kind of play it safe and make sure people don't make fun of me. And it totally shaped my life.
Well, that's such an incredible insight at such a young age. I mean, some people get to their deathbed and haven't figured that out. That actually, you can go searching for happiness all you like, but the truth of it is what you found at 9 years old.
And in hindsight now, I was oblivious to this as a kid. My parents created a foundation where that type of learning was normal and natural. My dad he had read all sorts of books on mindset and language and things that he was teaching us as kids, sometimes subliminally, sometimes, through osmosis, sometimes directly if we were humble enough to actually listen. It's hard to listen to your dad when it's your dad. But he had planted those seeds very intentionally. And the way he and my mom lived showed me that the way you find joy is serve others. And don't do it because you want a reward. Don't do it because you want to look good. Do it because you love people. And when the motive is really rooted in unconditional love, it creates this fertile ground of learning to where that became just normal, right? So I'm forever grateful for them and how they raised me to help me think and even have the thought, I feel happy. Why? Because I serve someone. Cool. Go serve more people, right? Like, you're right. That's a very uncommon thought for a 9-year-old, but not in my home because my parents are just awesome. They're just phenomenal people.
It's that, like the old saying, isn't it? That every cloud has a silver lining. That
Yeah,
you wouldn't wish what happened to you, with your teeth and everything on anybody. But you could argue that if you didn't have that experience, that you might not have had that insight until much later in life.
for sure. If ever, to your point, right? Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so multiple surgeries later, multiple times of teeth falling out later in public while I'm talking, fall out. Nightmares coming true. Finally, we're a pretty stable place now, but these are all my teeth are fake, and I've had to get implants drilled up in the bones because the other surgeries fell through. I mean, it was just
Yeah. And just for the sake of the listener who's not watching this, Jeff has great teeth.
boy, I paid for them in more ways than one.
So, what about academically at school? Would you describe yourself as kind of academically gifted, or were you interested
No,
in other aspects?
absolutely not. Dyslexic, learning disabilities in many ways. And what I learned at the time, school was very frustrating for me. Academically, I didn't excel, and I was a late bloomer academically and intellectually. What frustrated me though about school is that it wasn't relevant. I couldn't apply the knowledge, and if I can't apply knowledge, I get bored. I haven't been diagnosed with ADD, but I'm about 100% sure that I have ADD. So you add the dyslexia with ADD, and learning just was slower for me. But another thing that frustrated me was emotionally, in emotional intelligence, I knew I was gifted. I could connect with people. I could read between the lines. I could read the room before that was even a saying. I could see with most of my teachers, I could run circles around them emotional intelligence wise. And it frustrated me that when I would push them on certain things, they would get defensive because, here's a young punk trying to challenge them on things, and they didn't like that. And then they would just kind of put me back in my place where I wasn't the smart kid. I got told, you'll never be able to write legible writing. You're one of you have one of the worst penmanships of any student I've ever taught. I was told, you really don't read well. You're not good at mathematics. I guess math's for you.
Hmm.
I love that.
Hmm.
And so for a while, I just believed I wasn't smart. And all through middle school and high school, I believed that. I got by and I still got decent grades. Nothing top of the class, but nothing bottom either. But school was not my thing. I thought, I'm not going to go to university. I'm going to make it work without more schooling. And sure enough, I was wrong.
Was it, were there any parts of school life though that did excite you, did interest you?
Oh yeah, people. I loved people. I loved all shapes and sizes, all races. I loved people. I was friends with every little group in school, whether they were my black brothers from another mother. I could say that because we were super close. And whether they were Latinos, I could say that because my dad's ancestors are all from Mexico. I just felt like I fit. Whether they were my Asian friends, I loved people, and I found common ground with people, and because of that was, served in student body and student council and student government, depending on what you call it, because I liked people and people liked me and I could just help them. But see, that happened because I had developed the muscle younger to learn how do I connect with people because of my accent with my teeth, right? It's really interesting looking back how that gave me the resilience and the ability to just let go of my insecurities and just worry more about people than myself. Because most of us are just middle school. We are children in big people's bodies.
Amen, brother.
We're insecure. We have all sorts of, I hope they don't make fun of me this, because we have all sorts of scars from our upbringing. But I had to overcome those pretty quickly. And to where then it was like, come what may.
Maybe because your scars were so visible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. It's a great point. So yeah, by the time I was 15, 16, 17, 18, make fun of me all you want. And by the way, I was no physical specimen to look at. I was still, I got contacts, which helped with my eye situation. But physically, I was one of the smallest kids on campus, really, really short, like really short, to the point people thought, wait, are you in our grade? All the time. And people would try and pick me up all the time because I was so small and light. I was their toy, but I didn't care. When I graduated high school, I was 5 feet, 5 inches. Most of my classmates were 5'10", 6 feet. I was significantly shorter, but I didn't feel it. I felt their same size. And so when I went back for my 10-year and our reunion, actually for my high school, people were blown away that I had grown another 6 inches, and they just could not believe that I
So
actually
you were a
grew.
late bloomer physically as well as intellectually. You said, "Wow."
Yes, yes, yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's really funny looking back how late I was in all aspects. And again, blessing in disguise, because I had to learn different coping mechanisms, different ways to build resilience mentally, emotionally, physically, because I didn't have any of those things going for me, right? So I just had to make do with what I had, and be the best with what I was given versus feel like I was a victim, feel like it wasn't fair. And thankfully, some of my kids are following in my footsteps. So I know how to coach and parent them. It's hard. It's difficult. And I have to be careful to not say, oh, I know exactly how you feel, because, everyone's a little bit different, but I do know enough to be able to empathize and help them through the difficulties. And, as a young man, all of your friends have already hit puberty. They're already large. They're building muscles. They're tall, and your voice is still like this. And that was me for quite a while. One of my sons is that way right now, and he gets frustrated. And I say, "Man, I feel you. Definitely know how you feel, and it'll work out. We'll get there together." He's the one that's actually in wrestling right now, learning a lot of resilience and how to just overcome mental obstacles and physical obstacles, and he's doing great with it.
This insight that you had at 9 years old, that your happiness, your joy comes through serving others and helping them experience happiness and joy. Where would you rate that on the scale of important skills as an adult?
Oh man, way up there. Because happiness and joy isn't something that may or may not be in the cards, or something that only the lucky have. Happiness and joy are created. And and I think the sooner we can learn that every human being, regardless of what you've been given, regardless of who you are, can create joy and happiness. Man, I'd say it's top three of most important skills to learn in life. I believe we are meant to have joy in life amidst the struggles, amidst the pains, but to find the joy and the happiness and the silver lining in the clouds, because we all have clouds. And the more you get to know people and the more you live, the more you realize, wow, everybody has a lot of dark clouds. Life is brutal, but it's also meant to be enjoyed, and meant to be something where we can find and have enduring joy. And if you're too into your own problems, issues, what's happened to you, and you play the victim card, you just won't have joy. But everybody has had things done to them. Everybody's had unfortunate situations, but the most resilient are the ones that see, how can I get better from this instead of getting bitter, and how can I actually learn from this versus continue to ask why me. Instead of saying why me, it's what can I learn from this, and how can I? All a mind game of just choosing the better path and choosing joy. So yeah, it's a big one. You can tell I'm passionate about it because I do believe everyone can create joy, and I want deeply for everyone in the world to find and create joy. Life is just so much more beautiful when we can feel it.
There's a strong historical precedent for what you're talking about, 'cause it was Plato that said, "Be kind, but everyone is fighting a hard battle."
Yep.
Looking outwards to others opposed to inwards to yourself. Yeah. So what are the other two then, if what we've just talked about is a top in the top three?
I would say that the top one is truly discovering and owning your purpose of why you're on this earth.
Coming back to the North Star.
Correct. Correct. I would say that's number one. And so when I work with the clients that I serve and the CEOs around the world that I'm coaching, one of the first fundamental principles that we go deep on is, what is your individual purpose and identity? Why are you here? What purpose do you play in this world? And the clearer you are with that, then that's the litmus test to be able to say yes and no to what comes your way. Is it in line with my North Star? And if it's not, that's okay to say no. If it is, go for it. Right. So I would say that's number one.
What's your North Star?
My North Star, it's deeply personal and religious, but it's to invite others to come under Jesus Christ. He's my number one example, friend, mentor, leader. I just love studying his life. I just think he's brilliant. And I think what he did in this world is just unprecedented. And the joy that I have felt by growing closer to him is so exquisite and so awesome that I feel like, man, I want everybody in the world to feel this, and I'll invite them. And that's the point that I mentioned, invite, right? I'm not going to force. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to condescend. I just want to say, hey, here's what I've learned and here's what I found, and it's amazing. Who am I to not share this with people? And then if people want to learn more, cool. If they don't, cool. And a lot of my clients say, it's interesting how you coach, because I never feel like you are judging me or that you need to push me one way or another. You just live your life, and it's inspiring me to ask more questions about how and why. And so that's my North Star. And I've learned that when I get really clear on that, things become, wait for it, very clear, right? When I'm clear, things become clear. When I have clouds or ambiguity, life is cloudy and ambiguous. And there is so much power when you can find your personal purpose. It's like, it makes all the suffering have meaning. I love Viktor Frankl's book of Man's Search for Meaning, that suffering ceases to become suffering as soon as we find meaning behind it, right? In essence, I kind of butchered that quote, but that's the point. When you can find meaning to everything, you come alive. It's just such an amazing way to live, and it's different for every person. It's important for all of us to find that, and it takes some work.
It is. There's a lot has been written about purpose and finding your purpose and living your purpose. What's your take on you? And you kind of just alluded to it there, that it does take work. But for the listener who perhaps isn't as certain of their North Star as you are and I am, what advice would you give in terms of the work that they can start to do to kind of tap into their North Star?
Yeah. I'd say 3 quick answers, and they might sound a little cliche, so bear with me. If you're listening and you're rolling your eyes, it's okay. My kids do this all the time, but I promise just hang on with me. Number 1, have a desire. Have a desire to find that purpose. Number 2, have the belief that you can find it. Because I think some people, they flirt with, I'd like to know that, but then they go, but I don't know. And then they just let go. Don't let go. Pursue it. So have a desire, have the belief that you can find it, and then a nice model to help. I love Japanese ikigai. It's a really great 4 overlapping circles. If you haven't heard it or seen it, I have tweaked it a little bit for my purposes, but in essence, there are 4 questions to help you find purpose. What are you really good at? What do you love to do? What can make you money? What does the world need? That 4th question I've actually tweaked because of, it won't be a surprise, what does God want of me? But if that doesn't resonate with you, what does the world need? Serves the same purpose, right? And what happens is you overlap all those, you find right in the core, that's a really great purpose. It lights you up. And when Sunday nights come, you actually are overjoyed for what's coming the next day versus feeling, oh no, right? That's a good indicator you're not fully living your purpose if Sunday nights are the Sunday scaries or the Sunday night blues or whatever you call them. Or if you are drowning your sorrows or numbing yourself with alcohol or drugs or anything else that we're addicted to. Those are good indicators that our body is not at peace and we're having to mask all of the pain because we haven't been able to really live our true purpose. Man, find that purpose. Go create it, because it is, I believe everybody has a purpose and everybody's on this earth to serve a greater good, and it takes work to find it. But desire and faith to know that it can exist are the first two steps to then go create.
So what's the third thing in your top three?
Uh, so North Star,
Serving others is your path to joy.
and that you can create your own happiness is really, that's kind of serving others, create your own happiness is really the same one. I think it's that we can live in a world that we design, that we are creators at our core. We are meant to create. We're built to create. And I don't mean create a nice piece of art, though that might be it. But sometimes people hear create and they think of the creative arts, art, music, drawing, what have you. Those are all great. I mean that we as human beings can literally create and change our default future. That if quote unquote the stars are aligned to do this, we can impose our will and our desire to change that future because we so desire. I love the Abraham Lincoln quote that you can't predict the future, so go create it. I think it's brilliant. And I believe we are creative beings, but we hold ourselves back and we live beneath our potential because we're scared. I think most of us are just scared because we've been beaten down before. We've tried it before. It hasn't worked. And so we just kind of say, oh, well, let the face decide. I'm just gonna see what happens, and why try? Why fight it? But I believe we live beneath our privileges and beneath our potential when we allow those setbacks to define us. All those can do is just help refine us versus define us and enable us to just create a better future. But it requires a lot of perseverance, a lot of hard work, a lot of belief of just, it's tough. But I think that's it. And that's what really shaped my mind as I was sharing from that Lion and Greatest Showman, and why it lit up my soul. Because I was like, that's true. I can, and I'm going to go do that.
What's really interesting to me is that all of those three things that you talked about there, you've used the word belief in explaining all three, which kind of speaks to me of mindset and whatever. So I don't. So sometimes I have these insights when I'm talking to someone, and I want there to be a question there, but it just doesn't come. I mean, how when you hear that observation of mine, what does it resonate with you?
Yeah, 100%. And you nailed it. It's mindset. You could argue one of my top three is mindset, but what I'm doing with each of them is actually going a little bit more descriptive of what do I mean by mindset. You know, if you think you can live in a world that you design, that's mindset, right? But I like the wording and the imagery that comes with the saying that I can live in a world that I design. And so, yes, the thread on all of these is mindset, belief that, what the mind can conceive and believe we can achieve. So cliche, but so true. Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. So cliche and so true. And, a very logical, cynical thinker is listening to this saying, this Jeff guy is lame. I'm turning this off right now. I get it. I do. In fact, I'm married to a very logical, somewhat cynical thinker, and she's amazing. And she challenges my thinking all the time. And I challenge her thinking all the time. Find what works for you in your mindset. But if thinking like this is annoying to you, I would ask you why. Why is it? And often it's because deep down, we're scared to fail. The two greatest human fears are fear of failure and fear of not being enough. And anything we pursue that starts to push on those two fear buttons, we are just wired to withdraw and to tell ourselves it's a different story. Well, because of this or because of that. And it's like, no, we just don't want to fail.
It's interesting you said fear of failure and fear of not being enough as opposed to fear of success, because I often hear it right. So why did you phrase it that way?
Because I've read a lot of books and I've practiced a lot of this on my own, and I've watched others, really successful people, and I just grounded it to those two patterns. I believe fear of success is just, it's synonymous with fear of failure. It's just on the other side of it. And a fear of not being enough goes to their deepest, most childlike part of who they are, that either how they were raised, nurture, or nature. There's an inherent need for each human being to just feel that just their existence is enough, that they're a beautiful soul, regardless of what they achieve and quote unquote who they can become. They just have it, because I believe every human soul has divinity within. And if that is true, which I believe it is, we are enough just as we are. Now, that doesn't mean stop learning, stop progressing, stop growing. But to what end are we learning and progressing and growing? If the motive is to prove that we are worth something, that's a fool's errand and we'll always be disappointed. But if the motive is to learn and to fill our souls and to grow, then great. It doesn't matter if it quote unquote succeeds or works out. We already are plenty worthy creatures to just be wonderfully likable, kind, worthwhile souls, regardless of what we achieve. But a lot of humans we're not designed that way.
Which in a way kind of negates any sense of the word failure, because if that is true, what you've just described, then how can you fail? So what
100%.
what does failure mean to you?
I don't believe in the word failure. I just don't. The only time failure, well, let me expound on that a little bit. Because I believe there's inherent worth in everybody, that everything we do is just an awesome learning journey. And I believe success is one of the worst teachers. And when we don't get what we want, that's one of the best teachers, because we can just reverse engineer and say, okay, what happened? How can I change? What can I do different? Instead of why me? Why that? It's okay. What can I learn? That simple shift in questioning ourselves is powerful. So then when we get to that place of feeling like, yeah, there isn't really failure. It's just learning what did work the way that I wanted and trying again. Then life literally is a game. It's a joyful, fun, awesome thing because you got nothing to prove. If someone challenges you on something and calls you out, you can be curious and grateful versus critical and angry. It's like, yeah, oh, you're right. And right now on this podcast, I'm saying stuff that I'll hear in a year or two and go, oh, that's kind of embarrassing. I've learned this now. Wow, I thought that was cool. That's just, it shows that I'm growing and learning and progressing. All good. No need to get embarrassed. No need to get defensive. But whenever we get defensive, whenever we get embarrassed, all that is just someone or something touching a button in us that hasn't been fully healed yet. That's it. And it's like, oh, I just got sensitive on that. And just when I think that I'm feeling like, yeah, I'm kind of untouchable, I'm good, my wife will find a new button. We've been married 25 years and she's really, not that she's like trying to annoy me or anything, but she knows me so well that she can say, Jeff, you're saying this, but I don't think that. I'm like, I'm right. That's a new thing I've got to learn. I've got to get better.
There's a guest on the podcast, one of the very first people I spoke to, Ed Dale, you might know the name, used to work with Frank Kern. And he had, the phrase he used and had got kind of latched onto was, so you said, what can I learn? His was, how is this for me?
It's great.
So something happens, like, how is this for me? It's like, just as Dr. Wayne Dyer said, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. And that's kind of
100%.
There's nothing new under the sun. There's lots of people talking about the same thing in different ways. It's like we just sometimes need to hear it from someone else in a slightly different way to finally get it. So we were talking about belief there, and earlier in the conversation, you were saying that when you graduated high school, you believed that you weren't going to go to university and whatever. So let's go back to that Jeff. What happened to that belief?
What happened was, my real conviction of my spirituality came through. And, in the church that I'm a member of, it's customary for 18, 19-year-old young men to go off in the world and to just serve what we call a mission. You do a mission and you serve for about 2 years and you just share the gospel of Jesus Christ with people. And I thought, if I'm going to do that, I can't rely on anything my parents have said or anything my friends. I need to know for myself, is this what I really believe? And I questioned and I challenged and I rebelled, and it was good. I think it was really healthy, as the way most teenagers do, to where I came to a peace and a joy that was so powerful and so electrifying that I was like, how can I not share this? As I mentioned. So when I actually lived in Buenos Aires for 2 years, learned Spanish. Man, that was brutal. But just learning a new language and mastering a new language, I thought, when I care enough about something, I can learn anything.
Maybe I'm not so dumb after all.
Right. And I was actually pretty good in Spanish, and my accent was good, and I could fit well to where after a year of being in the country, people thought I was a native speaker. And I was like, wow, I felt really good, right? Now, I'm not naive enough to say everybody thought that, and I wasn't that great with all words, but I could really carry on a great conversation. And I thought, I'm good at learning. And I realized, why am I good at learning? And I thought, because I care about what I'm doing. So I was like, in school, things were pushed on me, and I was like, no relevance, no application, ADD, gone, right? I just would do the bare minimum. But if I really cared about something, I could learn anything. And then I met some really dear friends that I just loved. When you're in the trenches with someone, when you get called all sorts of names, when you get spit at, when you get threatened with a knife or a gun, and you are in the trenches, you build bonds with people. Some call them trauma bonds, some call them just, friendship bonds. It's why war heroes together become friends for life, because you go through something so life-changing. Anyway, I did that with them.
I'm guessing those examples that you gave were not theoretical.
No.
So
No.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, we were in some really rough parts of downtown Buenos Aires where there were just lots of crime and lots of wonderful people, but also certain pockets, like in any big city, there are some dangerous places, right? And as missionaries, you go anywhere. You're sharing love and light, and naively you just go. Right? You're like, we'll be protected, and we were. But we couldn't wear rings or watches because we would just be targets. We had to always be careful and mindful. We'd learn street smarts in the most fascinating way. You knew how to walk, you knew how to talk, you knew how to look, you knew how to not be distracted. I learned a lot of really amazing life skills. But even so.
And any particular stories, any particular points of drama that come to mind?
Oh yeah. One night we were leaving a home after teaching a lesson to a family that they loved it, and it was dark, and we were in the suburbs. And as we walked, we both, and you're always paired up with what we call a companion, right? So we're together, and at the same time, without saying a word, we both looked at each other, and at the exact same time said, "Run!" And we just knew we had to run to the bus stop about 10 blocks away. We had no idea why. You know that feeling if you're in a dark, scary basement and you're running up the stairs thinking someone's chasing you behind? It was that feeling. Like,
oh my God, I hate being chased.
Right? It was that same terror of like, oh no. And then about 4 blocks into the run, we looked 1 block over, and there were faint streetlights, and we saw a gang of about 8 people running with us. So they were tracking us. We could sense it. And we thought, what do we do? And we knew we had to wait at the bus stop, and we were going to be sitting ducks if we did that. So as we run to get to this main street, we thought, what do we do? And there was a taxi shop right next on the other side of the street, opposite of the bus stop. So we ran to the taxi shop where people were, just to kind of act like we were going to grab a taxi, right? And this gang hid behind the shadows. They knew our routine. They knew where we were going. They were going to rob us. We knew it. So we waited with the taxi shop, and they were saying, what are you doing? We're like, and just kind of played it down. And we saw the bus approach, and we thought, this is our ride home. We don't have any money to buy a taxi. We have to get on this bus. And so we said, okay, we'll wait for the bus to stop, get the other passengers, and then right as it departs, run after the bus and jump on to try and catch these thieves off guard, right? So as we do, we see the bus come, and we watch it, and we can see they're watching us, and from the corner of our eye, we have to act like we're oblivious to them, right? And as soon as the bus takes off, we see them kind of go, and they kind of lurk back into the shadows. And then we start running after the bus as fast as we could. And when we get on the bus, we literally jump on the steps and hang on. And right then they come running out, but it was too late. And they stared us down as we stared them down as we rode by, and we just kind of smiled.
I can almost see that filmically. Can see that, like, the tracking shot along the bus.
It is so vivid in my mind. Everything about it, because they were some scary, scary people who were not out to do good. So we evaded that one, but other ones where I was with a friend where he was on a train and somebody pulled out a long Bowie knife about more than a foot long and put it into his gut and said, give me all your money. Another time, that same one was walking down the street, and he was a victim of a drive-by shooting, and he had to hit the deck to avoid the bullets. That didn't happen to me personally, but the guy that I was with did, and so it was no joke. And you had to go, why am I doing this? That's where I was so grateful for my conviction of what I felt to be true and what had helped me so much. I wanted to share it with other people, as I mentioned, invite. And if people listened, awesome. If they didn't, awesome. They have the power to choose what they want to do. I'm not going to force anything on them, nor am I going to look down at them for not listening. Everyone has their own journey, and hopefully in time they'll listen later. But if not, I'm doing my part to invite, and that to me was success. Having the courage to invite versus having the fear of what if they say no. Just share it.
I imagine that there's other skills you learn there, life skills in terms of connecting with people and like doing something that you're uncomfortable with. And
Oh my gosh, the list is, it's so long I can't even begin to tell you. The top two though are how to love people regardless. And when you're living with someone who you didn't choose to live with, that you're paired up with, who drives you crazy and you're with them 24/7, how do you find the good in that person? It's one of the best marriage preparation lessons you could ever learn, right? It is. Because over time, you start to annoy each other as spouses. It just happens. It's normal. But I learned accentuate the positive and just let go of the negative.
I think there's a song about that, isn't
There
there?
is. There's many songs and poems. And I also learned if I don't like someone, I don't know them well enough. And to invest to
Oh
get to know
my
their story.
God. Can you say that again? Just like,
Yeah. If I don't like someone, I don't know them well enough.
oh my God, that is so profound.
I can't tell you how many times in my life. So I learned that over 25 years ago. And I can't tell you the number of times.
Where did you learn that? When and how did you learn that?
I learned it in high school when there were people that bothered me. And then I got to know their story and found out, wow, they're in a single parent home where there was abuse and there was this and that. And I realized that's why they do this. And I just felt sheepish and embarrassed that I was annoyed by them. But when I got to know their story, I thought, oh, now I get you. Now I understand. And that has happened more times than I care to admit. I'd love to tell you that, oh yeah, I mastered that one lesson. And so therefore no one ever annoys me. No, I'm human. Things and people annoy me. But every time, I kid you not, every time that I've ever had anyone annoy me, when I do the work to invest and get to know them, I realize there it is again. It's me, not them.
I'm reminded of something I learned from a book by Oprah Winfrey in dialogue with a neuroscientist who specializes in the role of trauma in childhood neurobiological development. And the title of the book is the premise of the book, which is what happened to you.
Yeah.
Instead of why are you behaving like that, or
Right.
why are you such a dick? It's like what happened to you, and that's in effect what you're saying.
That's it.
There, because if you ask yourself that question, you have to get to know the other person.
Yep. And it reminds us that often we're the ones that are the issue, not them. We have a tendency to think, well, they're annoying. Well, when's the last time we've looked in the mirror at our own quirks and our own things? But because we're used to them, they're not quirks, they're normal, right? But somebody else, if they're new to us, often we have a tendency to villainize them, but often it's just our inability to see them for who they truly are. But yeah, that was a great lesson. The other great lesson was, so one, how to really live with and love people regardless of their seemingly, any annoyances. The second one I learned was that true joy comes from serving. So back to my top three, right? It's like when you can forget yourself in the service of others, there is so much joy. And I'm not saying to the extreme where you are a martyr and you don't take care of yourself at all. Sometimes people hear that and they think, wow, then I can never exercise or I can never do it because I always have to help other people. No, like the oxygen mask analogy is still very real, and make sure you're in a good place and you're in a strong foundation so that you can serve people for an enduring period of time. But when we do, man, life is just so full of color and joy and happiness and purpose. It's just awesome. So great. So great.
So what did you figure out that you cared about when you came back from the mission that you went on to study?
I cared about psychology, interestingly, about how people are wired. And so I didn't go into psychology. I went into marketing, but I went into marketing because I love the psychology behind marketing. I didn't like psychology enough to just be in psychology only, because I did like the business and the creative aspects of marketing, but I loved the element of psychology behind marketing. And I loved my university classes that were tailored accordingly. The ones that were general education that had nothing to do with that, I was like, yeah, I'm not as much of a fan, but it was to the end of my marketing degree, which I loved. And then I applied that in my career over the years, and then went back to another 2 years of school to receive a master's in business. And I thought I would have, the high school in me to go to university twice. There's no way. But by that time it was an executive MBA, and my brain had fully matured, and I realized I am smart. Wow. And there was actually a time in class of business school where I was sitting there, and all of my history of not being smart, I'd been a little bit more confident with that. But we had this pretty complex business case, and it was a global business setting that I was in, with all different types of professors from different countries and different practitioners. My cohort of classmates was about 20, in which we all collectively spoke about 30 different languages. It was just a really diverse global thinking, which I loved. And the professor presents the particular case study that's really complex. And he had been teaching forever. And he said, okay, so what are your thoughts? And I gave an answer. And because I pulled from at this point, 15 years of business experience or more than that. And he looked at me and he goes, Mom, all my years of teaching, I have never heard an answer that brilliant and that spot on. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. And I said, well, and he said, how did you come to that? And I shared my personal experience in business and other things. And he goes, yeah, that clearly you get it. And then moved on. Unbeknownst to him, I'm in class and I start crying. I'm like, what is going on? And I realized I finally shed the "you're not smart" persona fully and finally, and realized, no, I am smart. In fact, I'm very smart, and I'm okay with that. Not in an arrogant way, but I know who I am, and I can learn anything I choose to learn, and I am unstoppable. Turns out my teachers were wrong. Turns out I was a late bloomer, so I can see why my teachers probably said what they did, right? But I just kind of shed that and realized, wow. And on break, I called my wife and I was like, guess what? I was like,
I just
here
started
I am in
crying.
business school. It was so funny. I was like, I don't care. And I learned another wonderful, wonderful lesson, that you can't powerfully create your future until you are powerfully at peace with your past. And that's deep.
Say that again.
You can't powerfully create your future until you are powerfully at peace with your past. It requires so much internal work, therapy, and whatever it may be, to just let your past be a friend and not a foe, and to help you see who you become and see the gratitude in it, versus letting what occurred to all of us hold us back through fear or insecurity or bitterness or hatred. And a lot of people will hear that and go, Jeff, but you don't know what happened with me. I've been abused or that. And I have so much love and empathy for everyone's past. And I still strongly contend everyone can find a way to find peace with their past. It just takes a lot of work and a lot of facing demons it's not fun. It's really tough.
A lot of work and a lot of time as well. There's something that happened in my life. My first business, which I started like the end of the 90s, and ran it up and then ran it into the ground in the space of about 3 years. So this is beginning of 2000. So we're talking, 20, 25 years ago. And I was pretty sure that after that amount of time, and I don't really think about it consciously, but over the last month or so, I've started doing regular breath work in the morning. You talked.
It's great.
We start the session with it, and it was guided meditation, breath work. And the question that was asked today made me reflect on that time, and I started crying.
Yeah.
And there was obviously a block there, some somehow, the sense of failure that I had there, and the sense, because it was a sense of I did have the fear of failure about what I'm stepping into at the moment. And then the Corinne Phelps, just the amazing guide, she said, think back to a time in your life where that manifested. And subconscious is just so great, isn't it,
Oh
Jeff?
yeah.
You don't, if you just kind of give it the space, the time and space, and that time in my life was what came to me immediately. So kind of balled that out for a bit, and then the guided meditation came and said, no. So now in your present day self, I want you to go back to that time of your life and just say these words. You're amazing.
Yeah.
It's like okay, yeah. So the time, do you do the work? It's hard, but it also takes time as well.
Right. It does. And a book that helps with that, that I've loved, is Byron Katie's "Love What Is." She asks 4 powerful, simple questions in that book. Just Google it if you're listening. It's brilliant, and it's so like seemingly simple. These questions, like, really? But when you actually answer these questions, when you get triggered, when you get frustrated, and you do that work, that to me, she calls it doing the work. And when you do that work, you can love what is. You can just be grateful for who you are, for what's happened in your life, and you can see that what's occurred has helped who you are to become who you become today. And many of us, if I were to give you the opportunity, sometimes I do a keynotes or I speak at events, and I ask people if there were a really, really traumatic, difficult experience in your life that you had the ability to just remove and take, and I could take it away from you, would you choose to allow that to be taken?
No, I wouldn't. And that was what I realized from this work.
And that's the answer.
Yeah.
Yep. I have yet to have someone that say yes. People say no, because I am who I am now because of this. I learned this empathy. I learned this resilience. Yep. And I'm not saying, hey, so let's all hope we have bad things happen to us. No, but we can love what is if we choose to. Really powerful.
I can get really great teeth.
Yeah. Seriously, man. Oh, what a journey. We 5 surgeries later, or finally where we are now. And man, it's what a journey.
So did you choose, what was the journey from coming back from mission and going to university? What was the kind of thought process of deciding on marketing as opposed to something else? I mean, did you think that it would be a route to, fame and riches, or?
No. In fact, so I had no idea what I wanted to study. And so what I did is took a lot of introduction courses, introduction to PR, introduction to advertising, introduction to marketing, introduction to things in a general. I knew I wasn't going to be a physician. I don't like science very much. I almost pass out just when I see a needle. So, anything medically inclined, no. So I was able to rule out things that just weren't in my nature. And so when I narrowed it down, then took some introduction courses, what I was looking for was what lit my fire, what excited me. And what I was going to do with that was very secondary, if not tertiary. I just knew from my own learning that I need to care about what I'm learning, because then I'll do better, and so that helped me. And marketing intrigued me. PR did not. I thought PR would be my thing because I love relations with people, public relations. Clearly that's it. And then I thought, no, public relations is all about changing perception and somewhat manipulative. And I didn't like any of that. Right? I was like, I don't like that. You could argue it's the same thing in marketing, right?
Well, I was going to say, you could argue that.
Right, you could. But what I found in marketing is it just resonated more with my creative side. I like that a little bit more. And also I could see the economic side being helpful. And I thought in time I need to provide for a family, and I've got to make money. And how am I going to do that? My dad was a teacher, a great teacher, but I'm not going to be a teacher because I want to make a little bit more money than that. And that's okay. Right. And it worked out. And so my dad says a lot. He's like, you do very much what I did, but you just make a lot more money at it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, because arguably you are a teacher, just
exactly.
not in a school.
And a lot of the frameworks and books that I use literally are what my dad taught me. And so he says that serious, saying, it's so fun for me to see what you're doing and what you're providing for your clients. Because a lot of it, he's like, yeah, I helped you do that. I'm like, I know. And I love you, Dad. You're amazing for it. I also said, and I'm going to make some money doing it. And that's okay. As long as my motive is pure and money isn't going to define me, and I want to bless people's lives with it, I'm all in. So yeah, that's why I chose what I did and what I do.
And that 15-year journey from getting your marketing degree before you did your MBA,
Mm-hmm.
was that all in one company? Just, again, just broad brushstrokes, paint that picture for us.
Late 90s, early 2000s, there's a web services company that's where I learned culture development and providing value. We were acquired in that process, and that was an amazing journey to start my career. And then when I almost lost my wife and son at childbirth, that was a whole traumatic experience. It shifted my thinking from marketing, where I was in, to more selling in the pharmaceutical world. And so I did that for 4 or 5 years, worked with a large public company and learned a lot of great things. And I learned how to sell really well at that company. I learned all the good training. Then I was diagnosed with cancer, and another shift of why am I really here on this planet? What's my true purpose? And am I aligned to that? And then I joined a startup company with my brother and best friend, Infusionsoft, now Thrive, and love that. And that's a year into that is when I learned I'd be coaching CEOs, when my brother, the CEO, went and found a CEO coach. And I was like, oh, that's me. That's it. And so for the next 10 years, I led and grew the companies that I was with from the perspective of a coach. What would a coach do in this? How could I build a team agnostic of a leader? How can I challenge and push people and all that great stuff? Then went to business school.
That's a really great example of designing your life. Is like
Yes,
seeing something that you wanted just resonated with you, and then
totally.
kind of just starting to do the things that only make sense if that is true.
Exactly. Yeah, and getting the reps in, getting the confidence in. Then as we scale that business globally, that's when I went to a global business school to really learn global business in a more effective way, only to leave.
So doing the MBA came out of being involved in Infusionsoft with the
Correct.
scale that it was going to.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Because one of the roles that I played there was expanding the business internationally and doing it through strategic partnerships, which is where I met you, right?
Mhm.
That in
Yeah.
that role is where I met different people from different walks of life. And I learned, having lived in Argentina, knowing, being culturally mindful and sensitive and not egotistical, the way, frankly, a lot of Americans, we can be just, well, America is, it's like, well, there's a lot of other great things in the world besides America, and it's good to learn that. Not to say I don't love America, and I'm not proud to be an American, I am, but it's also not the only thing. And it helped me realize in business, you've got to learn how people do business and what that means in their mind, and to not assume, and not to be arrogant with it. And so I purposely selected a global business school to teach those principles. And so every class we did was global. So global marketing, global negotiations, global economics. It wasn't just marketing. It was all from a global perspective, taught by French professors or Russian professors or Korean professors, or all walks of life that were also practitioners in their own rights, which I loved. They weren't just theorists. They were running on their own side businesses, consulting businesses. They had been part of Fortune 500 and others, and it was amazing. It was the greatest education.
Can you remember when you had the first massive light bulb moment on that course? They made you realize that you were in the right place.
The very first day. Actually, before I even started the interview process, the way they talked about business and how the best business minds, in their opinion, were those that could do business agnostic of the culture, because they could understand and have the humility and self-awareness to meet people where they're at versus domineering them because you were the one to conquer. I love the approach. And the school's name is Thunderbird Global School Management. It's just a phenomenal world-class school that's, I sing their praises all the time. But that, just in the recruiting process, I was like, yep. And then day one, they came in and gave the orientation. And honestly, I got teary-eyed again, because I was like, I'm in the right place. These are my people.
What were you hearing specifically?
I was hearing humility, self-awareness, and business. And to look at the business perspective, not from a place of zero sum win-loss, but from a place of abundance and humility, and doing business for the good of other people, to serve them in a way that they need versus what you need. That's how I learned selling. The best selling is selfless. It's all about solving the problem for the other person versus how do I get what I want, which is what most salespeople do. And so this business school, the way that they built their curriculum and the way their ethos was so conducive to how I view the world and how I view business. It was just awesome. Very powerful.
In that very broad brush painting of that 15-year period, you mentioned an incident with your wife and your son. So just back up before that a little bit. How did you and your wife meet?
Great
How did you?
questions.
So hang on a second. How did you and your wife meet? And what is your wife's name?
Sherry.
And if I was to ask Sherry what she thought of you when she first met you, what would she?
That's why I'm
what would she
laughing.
say?
You nailed it. You read my laughter well. So here's the bizarre. The short story is it was an arranged marriage. Wink, wink. The longer story is when I was in Argentina as a missionary for our church, she was in Barcelona, Spain as a missionary for our church. And when missionaries are in a particular geographic area, there are what are called mission leaders that are kind of overseeing all the 200, 400 missionaries that are 20-year-olds. It's an older couple. My parents were the mission leaders for Sherry's mission in Barcelona. And so they got to know her in a really wonderful way because missions are brutally difficult. You get people saying no to you way more than yes and making fun of you and doing all the stuff that I shared, right? And if you can find joy amidst that, that's a pretty amazing gift. And they saw that in Sherry. She made everything and everyone around her better. She lights up a room. She just does. She's just a beautiful soul. And they took to her and she to them, and they just built a really great, powerful relationship. And so after her time there, she had her final interview with my dad, and they were talking through things with my mom. And they said, "So what are your plans?" And she said, "I'm going to go to university at this particular school." And they said, "Oh, our son's going to be there too. You should look him up." Hence the arranged, right? And she thought, okay, that's a little bit weird. All right. And then I visited my parents in Spain 2 weeks after my wife had just gone home after that interview. There was a whole bunch of pictures. That was back in the day when you would actually develop pictures and they were in physical form, right?
Yeah.
And so this group of missionaries that had just gone home, their pictures were on my dad's desk because he had just developed them. And she was in many of them. And I said, who's that? She's kind of cute, And they said, "Oh, you've got to meet her. She is phenomenal." And of course, what did I say? No, that's just awkward. Too prideful. Long story longer. 6 months later, there was a party she was going to be at that I knew that I found a way to get invited to just to meet her. And I'm kidding you not, that night that I met her, it was 25 years ago, 3 days ago. It was our 25 of the day we met was January of 2000. And I remember her walking into this apartment. And as soon as she walked in, I was already there and I saw her and she's beautiful. And I knew who she was in character even more so, which made her beauty even more accentuated, right? It wasn't just a physical thing. I knew who she was in the trenches because my parents were like, she's phenomenal. So it took me forever to work up the courage to talk with her. Actually, my friends that I was with were the ones that helped me, thankfully. I'll never stop thanking John and Neil. They were there, and thank you to them. Anyway, so we met, and shortly thereafter, we dated for a very short period of time, and were married a very short period of time later. I mean, it was electrifying. What did she think of me? She thought he might be too short. That was her first thought, because she's like, I do not want to be taller than my guy. I know some people can do it, not me. And then she thought he's charming. Those are the only two things. But what she liked ultimately was my emotional intelligence and my sensitivity, that I could listen. What I loved about her was her depth of character and her wisdom. She's just, I could sit and talk with her for hours, and I still do. And I'm more in love with her today than I've ever been. She is the greatest blessing of my life. And man, the fact that she's endured me this long tells you how good she is, because I'm a lot to deal with.
You alluded to this incident where you nearly lost her and your son. What happened?
She, in her pregnancy, unbeknownst to all the physicians, had developed DVT, deep vein thrombosis, which is major blood clots in her femoral artery in her left leg. And after a little over 7 months of pregnancy, 7.5 months, about 8 months, she was in such debilitating pain she couldn't walk. And finally, we took her to hospital and presented, and through finally a series of tests, found that her whole left leg from her hip to her ankle was completely clotted. And so we had to hospitalize her and put her on, they put her on really potent blood thinners. And then through an accident, a nursing student was changing her catheter and broke her water, and she went into early labor and on really, really life-threatening blood thinners, right? So you don't want to go in labor on blood thinners. While that occurred, shortly thereafter, my son's vitals flatlined. And so they came in to rush to take her into emergency surgery while on blood thinners. And they said, "Dad, you stay here. We got her." And it was literally a scene from a movie. It was so traumatic. It was the most traumatic experience of my life because it was emotional for me. For her, it was traumatic physically, but emotionally a little different because they put her under, right? They had to operate. And she did recover, and my son was revived, and he was born dead, but they revived him. So he was okay, but she wasn't. And we had multiple doctors after that say, we can't do anything with the blood clots. They were undiagnosed for so long. They're just part of your body now. And now it's only a matter of time that they'll dislodge and go to your heart or lungs, and you're going to die. And we got a second opinion, and they just said, "You're going to die." And so they sent us home and just said, "We wish you the best in the short life you have left." And it was terrible. So for 3 months, we would go to bed I was thinking she's going to be dead in the morning. And it was super traumatic. But it taught me one of the most valuable lessons to really love and appreciate who you have. I lived in my life, in my mind, for a few months thinking I might not have her, and it was devastating. And so when she recovered and was able to really start to walk again, anytime we'd have a disagreement, anytime little small things would be annoying, it didn't matter because she was alive, you know? And I realized how I already loved her, but after that of feeling like she might be taken from me, my love reached a whole new level. And miraculously, every year it gets even deeper. Like, who knew? But she is the greatest blessing in my life.
And I guess the reality, Jeff, is that we don't have to go through that traumatic experience to have that realization.
Totally. It's true. And whenever I do speak and share the story, it took me 9 years, by the way, to actually tell the story because I was so traumatized. I would just cry if I ever talked about it. This is so difficult. But when I did share, that's exactly the point that I made. Don't allow an experience like this to make you really stop and think, what are you grateful for, and how are you tending to your most cherished relationships, and what do you take for granted every day? And if they weren't there, how would you think and act differently? And all of us have things to learn. And after even having that experience, I still forget sometimes. And I'm like, oh, no, hold on, perspective. Like, this is all good, right? So yeah, it's, again, great blessing from a very difficult situation.
Bit like your teeth, really. It's like in a different way. It's like
So
you're taking all the hard knocks, so we don't have to.
Yeah.
Earlier in our conversation, Jeff, we planted a flag in the conversation, which I want to go back to now and kind of just use to wrap up our conversation. And that was waking up at some stupid o'clock time in the morning in February 2018. So you'd already moved to your new house, had you?
No, not yet.
Okay. But that was, so because you saw that
We were in
December,
the process.
December
Correct.
2017. So you're in
Correct.
the process. Okay.
Yep.
So what realization did you come up with, and how has that impacted your life? What are you doing now, basically, is where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah. So the prompting was that got me up like a bolt of lightning was, it's time to start your coaching business. And I tried to go back to sleep, but my heart was palpitating. I was like, okay, so what does that mean? And then the clear thought came as I pulled out my laptop to think, what does that mean? The thought was, there are too many businesses that are succeeding at the expense of families. Go change that. And I thought, okay, like anything that champions marriage and family, I'm a big fan of. And I believe God is too. And that was the impression I was getting. And so I thought, wow, okay. And then I thought, well, all right, what does that look like? And literally within less than 5 minutes, a download of information came in my mind. And so it was that first thought. Then it was coach on mindset, action, spirituality, and kindness. Those are the mask principles that are universal regardless of the business stage. And here's who you can coach. Here's the pricing methodology. Run. I mean, it was like, I've never had that type of experience in my life till then. And since then, I just thought, okay, now what? And I thought, wow, this is how we pay for this miracle house. This is how it works. And I thought, wow, but I was with another software company and I thought, I don't want them to have the wrong idea that I'm leaving that. I'm totally grateful for that job. And so I actually, once the hour got more reasonable, I texted that CEO and said, hey, here's the thought that I had. And he knew about this miracle house. And he's like, I think it's great, that you can do that in the morning and then work with us during the day. And I'm super grateful for him for being open to that. And that started the journey of coaching CEOs to help them grow their business confidently without losing their priorities or their soul. That's what I do. And it's the most gratifying, most powerful work I've ever done. Not work, really. It's amazing.
And how do you do that if you could bottle it in, sound bites? I don't want to trivialize it.
No, yeah.
Just for the sake of our listener.
I extract the genius that's already within them. That's all I do. I remind them of who they are. I challenge them with powerful, poignant questions. I see them for who they can become and not who they are. And I'm relentless and I love them fiercely and they know it. So it gives me the permission to do all sorts of things and say all sorts of things that nobody else gets away with. But I do because they know my motive. And a lot of times CEOs, my clients will say, nobody talks to me like this. And I smile and say, glad we're here. Because other people probably would like to, but they're not sure how to do that. Because you're the CEO, right? They have all the power.
Yeah.
So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Do you have a go-to question for new clients?
Yeah. Who are you at your core? And why are you on this earth? Back to purpose and identity.
What sort of answers do you get back?
Oh man, I get all sorts of answers, but I rarely take the first answer. I see that this is more of a question for you to think about and sleep on for several days and to go really, really, really deep and to make sure that you're answering very honestly, not for something that sounds good or that gives you the perception that you want. So some of the answers are, who are they at their core? Some are competitive, compassionate leaders. Some are, I am patient, I'm loving, I am kind. From tough-nosed CEOs that you'd never expect. That's who they are, and they're trying to really get to that. Some are, I'm literally just stealing from some of my clients what they've said. I'm a powerful, peaceful provider. Some are, I'm a billion-dollar CEO who loves people. So they range, right? From all sorts. Some are, I am a son of God. It just depends on, what resonates with them and what connects.
And do you find more often or not so often that who they are at their core is at odds with how they are living, how they are experiencing the world?
Sometimes I would not more often than not, but sometimes, yes. And when they can find peace with that, man, their energy and their sustainability goes off the charts. They just have so much more energy. But one thing that I really help them do is help them separate their identity from their company or from their job, right? A lot of the times we unintentionally misconstrue the two and we couple them together. And so if the company or our job goes well, we feel great. If the company or the job goes poorly, we feel terrible. And that's not it. A good rule of thumb is to think if something can be taken from you, that's a good indicator that it's not your identity. And so I just help them through that.
Say that again and expand on it a little.
If something can be taken from you, it's not your true identity. Your identity is something that exists regardless of what you're doing on a day-to-day. It's deeper, it's more enduring. So for example, I'm a CEO of a $1 billion company. That's who I am at my core. Well, when the company hits bankruptcy, then what are you? Oh no, I don't know who I am, and I don't know. It's like I'm a husband, I'm a wife, and some would argue, well, that can be taken from you if your wife dies. But I believe that families are eternal, so I would say no. Husband, I am a child of God, can't be taken from, right? That gets to the really deep core of who are you at your core, and that those things can't be taken from you. Therefore, come what may. But if you build your identity around something that can be pulled from you, I'm the director of operations. That's who I am. Okay, well, when you lose your job, now what are you? I don't know who I am, right? You lose your sense of center, and you don't know what the world is all about no more, and that creates a lot of um, concern and stress and anxiety for people. So as soon as they can find that deep inner identity and purpose, they're much more powerful leaders. They're much more open to criticism. They're much more open to learning because it's not as personal. It's about becoming a better version of that versus this. So here's an example of what I mean. If you're at a networking event and somebody says, "Oh, so what do you do?" You know, the classic cliche answer or question. The answer inevitably is, "Oh, I'm a doctor. I'm an entrepreneur." And it's like, I didn't ask you, who are you? I asked you, what do you do? But we subconsciously attach what we do with who we are. And the more that you can consciously separate the two, the more peacefully and powerfully you live your life and the more effectively you lead.
How do you answer that question? Apart from saying, come up with a better question when you go to a networking event.
Right, yeah. Whenever I introduce myself, when I have a keynote, whatever, when people say, "Give me your bio," or whatever, the first thing is, I'm a husband of 20x years, now 25, and a father of 5 awesome kids. That's who I am. If I want to go deep and it's appropriate, I say I'm a son of God. That's how I answer who I am. And then I say, and for fun, I get to coach CEOs around the world. And that's awesome. Separating who I am from what I do. But then I have 6 I am statements that really help solidify who I am. And I help my clients to develop and create their own so that when they have those moments, the I am statements give them peace and power and perspective to ground them and to go, oh yeah, all good, making it happen.
How did you get your first client, and how long did it take you once you had this download?
Yeah, great question. Social media. So that same morning, I thought, okay, so I'm going to do it. And of course, what did I do? I got scared. Right? I was like, okay, I'll share this later. And it was like, no, it's time to go and go post it. Go post on LinkedIn and go post on Facebook. And so I did. And I actually just recently went back to that post, and so that brought up a good buzz. And I
What did
had
you
people
say?
DM me. Oh man, I said, I literally just woke up in the middle of the night with lightning bolt, and I am beyond excited. It's time to finally start coaching. And I just shared the story and said, I've known I should do this for years, but for one reason or another, I doubted it and I feared it. And no doubt and no fear anymore. I'm not going to let fear hold me back. It's time to coach. I know I'm born to this for this, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go this option or this option. If you're interested, DM me or comment below. Boom. And within 27 days, had enough clients to pay for that White House the way we needed on the monthly basis. And 27 days, just boom. It was, and that's how I know this wasn't me.
I just want to speak to the listener for a second and just say, go back and replay what you just heard and keep doing it until you figure out what your version of that is. Because what I just heard is that when you truly align with your North Star, when you break through those fear barriers, it becomes easy and effortless to achieve what you want to achieve. And I just see so many business owners just, they're posting content after day after post after doing all, just spinning their wheels and just doing everything they can to drum up business. And yet you didn't sound like you had any of that.
No.
Are you special?
I don't think I am. I just think that I gained a healthy relationship with fear. And It takes a lot of self-awareness to be honest. Where is fear holding me back? And it holds us all back. It just does. And yeah, it was, I honestly see it as a miracle when you can find that purpose, align to it and pursue it passionately and kick fear to the curb and just keep moving on. We've all got fear. Our relationship with fear is really the key.
I know, again, just for the sake of the listener, I know that you don't coach anyone and everyone. You have quite, shall we say, specific, if not strict, criteria about the kind of people that you coach. How would the listener know whether they should contact you or not?
Great question. 5 pillars of my target customer: CEOs of high growth companies who lead an executive team, who are trying to balance some semblance of a home life, who believe in a higher power, whatever that is. Here's why. CEOs affect the culture of the business more than anybody else, for good or for bad. High growth companies, because if they're in a place of, I'm good, they're not hungry to grow. I want growers who lead a leadership team. That implies a certain level of maturation in the business and different problems to solve when you're leading leaders. Very different than when you're solo entrepreneur. Third, people that value a holistic life versus their business is their life. And fourth, people that believe in a higher power. Ultimately, what I'm looking for is a level of humility, that you believe that there is something bigger that you can play versus you being the center of the universe, which some CEOs unintentionally feel like they are the center of the universe. So those are my 5 pillars.
Again, a lesson there. Just get really clear about who it is that you serve, which is what you've done.
Yep. It's so powerful. So powerful.
Speaking of service, how can the listener and I serve you the best right now, help you the most right now?
Good question. With the love of my life, after 5 years of feeling like we need to bring in the partners, the marital partners of the CEOs that I coach, to do something with them to help them build a great marriage and business versus having the business pull the marriage away. So last year we embarked on our first journey of this, of doing what we call the C-suite couples retreat, where it's a high-end, very luxurious retreat to get CEOs and their spouses away and to really build the business and the marriage and life that they want together. It's freaking amazing. And I get to do it with my love of my life, who is very introverted and was terrified to do it, which is why it took us 5 years to finally do it. He just said, when you're
Wow.
ready, we can do it, right? And she's like, I hate being in front of people, but I know we can do this. And then who am I to do this? All the things that we all go
Yeah.
through, right?
They're back to that fear again.
Right, exactly. And I said, who are you not to? You are a joy to be married to. And what you've created with me is miraculous. We need to share this. So we did that last year in the most luxurious location I've ever been to in my life, in the Waldorf in Cabo in Mexico. It is next level. We're doing it again this year. And if people are interested in that, connect with me. And I'm doing that for clients and non-clients alike. But people that are running a business and are trying to figure out, how do I do this well and keep a really healthy, happy marriage to take it to the next level? And I think this is our next. I believe this is the next 5 years of our lives. I feel it. There's something around it. I'm still going to be coaching, of course, but in addition, it's bringing the spouses together and helping them create a wonderful, really great business and a wonderful, loving marriage together. So, yeah.
You and Sherry are designing it and you're creating it. So I'm pretty sure that that's going to be your future.
Yeah. We had 5 clients with us before, and all of them said this is by far the greatest retreat we've ever been a part of. They could not say enough. And I said, no, we need critical feedback. And they said, we don't have any. This blew our minds. The workbook, the content, the preparation, the environment, everything about this was 5 stars. It was just amazing. So we thought, okay, we're on to something. Here we go. So we'll probably do one a year for now. And it's exciting and scary, right? It's the new thing. And I kind of like that. It's fun.
The only, I've just got my eye on the time. I'm really going to have to really put a bow on this and bring it into land if I can mix my metaphors. The other question that I always like to ask my guests at the end of our time together is, whose non-straight line journey would you like to hear? Or I guess another way of asking that question is, who do you know would really, really value and appreciate the kind of conversation that we've had this morning.
A friend of mine in Australia, Sean Greeley. A friend of mine in London, Jim Fairbairn.
Already you've exceeded, because I only wanted one.
Yeah.
But if you want to keep going, that's fine. Yeah.
No, there are many. Because anytime you study greatness in anybody, you realize the zigs and the zags that they've gone through to get to where they are. It's not coincidental. It's not by chance. There's a lot of intention behind it, and I love studying that. It's super gratifying.
Would you be open to introducing me to
Sure
those gentlemen?
Yeah,
that'd be great.
You bet.
Well, the only thing that remains for me to do, Jeff, on behalf of the listener and myself, is to thank you for sharing your non-straight line journey with us. It's been a privilege to spend the time with you and just appreciate and value you for who you are and what you're doing.
My pleasure. And thank you. Thank you for doing the hard work of creating this. And it's not easy. So I appreciate what you're doing to bring this to life. It's powerful.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Not a Straight Line. If this conversation helped to reorient your internal compass or inspired you in any way, please let us know by heading to podcast.notastraightline.life/rate and leave a rating and review. Thanks, as always, to Matthew Bliss of MB Podcast Services for his exquisite engineering of this episode. If you'd like him to help you with your podcast, contact details are in the show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or there's someone whose non-straight line journey you'd just love to hear, then please visit podcast.notastraightline.life/guest. Thanks for being here with me, and I'll see you next week for another amazing, deep, inspiring non-straight line journey. Love you.